first and last name and spell it?
Cynthia Ann Pruitt, Cynthia and Ann Pruitt, Pruitt.
All right. So you always look at me, never the camera.
Okay.
What was your son's name?
Dwayne
Last name?
Weathers,
Can you spell it for me?
DWAINWEATHERS, Jr.
And how old was he when you passed?
35.
I'm sorry. How old are you? I'm sorry.
56.
Okay.
56.
That's hard to believe. Okay, so he was 35. What
Mhm.
happened to him?
He got off work. He went and parked his truck, and he walked down the street on Rufus Drive and was struck by a flying bullet.
So it was like just random,
Random.
very random. Where did he work at?
He worked at Certainteed. They make shingles on North Market.
Do you know why he was maybe over in that area?
Well, he had a friend who lived there, and of course, I grew up over in that area on Powell Street. So it was right at the intersection of Powell and Rufus.
Where were you at when you first heard the news?
I was home here in Bossier. My brother called me at about almost 1 o'clock. And he told me, he said, I just got a call that Dwayne's been shot. And I was thinking to myself, it can't be not my Dwayne, because, I had talked to him earlier, and of course he was at work. And so I just rushed to the hospital, and they had so much confusion due to COVID. But I eventually saw the doctor, and he told me. And at first, I still was in shock. And as a matter of fact, I asked the nurse, I said, is he tall? Is he brown skinned? Because I was thinking it's not, it can't, it can't be, because my son was kind and loving. He worked every day, and he worked hard. He had 3 children who he spent a lot of time with, and he went to church. He played the drums at 2 churches. He paid his tithes. He did everything that a mother would ask of a son, and he was a good son to me. And so I was just in shock. Then I went to denial because I had to wait about an hour outside the hospital before anybody could come out and talk to me. And then when my son laid in ICU, I could only spend 30 minutes with him because he was already brain dead. And I prayed over him, and I held his hand, and that was all I could do. And I asked the doctor, I said, can his children come and see him? He has children. He has a sister. He got, nephews. I said, can anybody come and see him? They said no, because he has not been pronounced dead. And for me, that just ripped my heart out, because nobody could see him until after they pronounced him dead. So, am I angry? I'm angry because my son was a good son, and he was saved. I'm not angry because God took him back, because he was God's son before he was mine. He was loaned to me. I'm angry with the public and the people who were there, because the reports are that there were over 100 people at the scene, and nobody saw anything. And I know from being in the military, if you are standing next to somebody with a gun and they pull it out and they shoot, first of all, your ears are going to be ringing. And you may not know everybody at the function, but you know enough people to find out. And so at this point in the investigation, nobody has come forward to put on record what they saw and what happened, who had a gun. So I'm angry with the public. The police are doing everything they can do. They have did a semi-thorough investigation, and what I mean is that I don't think there's been enough follow-up with the people that they talked to initially. At this point, it's been almost 2 months, and so the case is cold. I think that my detective went on vacation. I know people have planned vacation, and it's already planned out. But if you have a scene where two people are killed, I think that that investigation needs to be passed on to somebody else to do the investigation while that main detective is on vacation.
So you've kind of just been sitting there idly.
I have been. I'm waiting. Um, some days I have good days. Some days are bad days because my son would call me every day and every night and check on me. Um, and then there are days when I feel like I just want to do my own investigation. But I know I can't do that. I have to let the system work for itself. Then I spend all day, a lot of times, listening to the Black Lives Matter on the TV. And then I have to question that because I say to myself that I'm sure that my son's life mattered most to me. But I think that for Black lives to matter to anybody else, they need to matter to us first. And as long as we continue to commit crimes and we continue to kill each other, then the rest of the world, looking at the Black Lives Matter, do they really matter? I'm sure they do. But May 31st, for me, changed my whole life and my whole outlook on everything because we need to stop the violence. It's not solving anything. And if people want to, it's their right to bear arms. But if you want to fire a weapon and shoot in anger, join the military. I joined the military. My husband's in the military. I did my time. I never fired my weapon in anger to hurt anybody, enemy or not. But I see it as a big problem in the community and in the world, as a matter of fact.
And all the people that are out there were black.
I can't really say that, but I would assume so. Moortown is predominantly black. So, yes.
Things have been kind of hard. Things feel like a standstill. And what you want is more from the investigation as well as more from the public.
Yes, yes.
Can you tell me, when he did pass, what were you feeling? What were your emotions?
Hurt, surprised. And I say surprised because I knew that hanging out at nighttime on a Saturday night or hanging out, period, that was not my son. He got off work. He stopped by his friend's house. And they turned to walk down Rufus Drive, which was right at the corner. And that's where his life was taken by a random stray bullet.
It wasn't his friend that was shot, too.
No. I'm not even sure if he knew the other person that was shot. And according to the detectives, the other person that was also killed was laying within feet of my son. My son was like 6'4", and so he was taller than most. I guess some bullets just flying, and then you got a high target. So I'm not even sure if the person was aiming at anybody. I don't know because they have not.
It was 1 a.m.
Yes, in the morning. So I just try and make each day count. And I want I need closure, and I don't have that yet, and I won't have that until somebody is in custody. Because like I said, that was my son's day, but tomorrow it could be somebody else's son. And because they haven't gotten the person off the street, they could very well be doing the same thing. Just shooting in the air or random shootings or committing other heinous acts of crimes. And, it could be anything.
Will be effective to getting guns and just cleaning up the streets, street for it, especially during the summer months.
I wish that people would be willing to come forward with information they have without necessitating a financial reward. But the reality of it is, some people have information they don't quite feel comfortable coming to police officers on scene. But Crime Stoppers tip and the Crime Stoppers Anonymous hotline gives people the ability to report that information without fear of retaliation. And during these hard economic times, unfortunately, I think that the $750 award up to $2,000 will be some incentive to have people call in on violent activity they know of, whether it be neighbors, family members, friends, just enough of an incentive to really help us solve some of this violent crime. So I'm excited about the initiative.
Besides people being uncomfortable, do you think there's a culture of just maybe not coming forward here in Shreveport?
And I think there is. I don't know why we have that culture, but I get that sense when I go out to a crime scene that there are people that simply don't even want to acknowledge our existence. They don't want to have a conversation with me or my officers. They're very uncomfortable in the fact that there's even uniformed police presence there, which is something we have got to overcome. But I've got to think that starts from a young age. And I don't know exactly what the cause of it is. Of course, I hear a lot of things. There's a perception in certain communities that maybe you can't trust police officers, maybe police officers are overly aggressive. But if we don't start talking about those things and come to an agreement that we're all citizens, we all care about what's best for our community, then we're not going to make improvements. We've got to have people come forward and let us know about violent crimes and violent criminals.
Has Crime Stoppers been really a resource for you all in the past? Do you
Yeah, absolutely. Crime Stoppers is great. Rarely do you hear me talk about crime when I don't say something about Crime Stoppers, because literally they have solved or assisted in us solving a number of crimes. We don't talk about open investigations for several reasons, one of which is we don't want to put information out there that maybe only a suspect would know. But a lot of times we just need one little piece of information, and someone sitting at their house has that little piece of information and just does not realize how important it is. So again, Crime Stoppers gives them opportunity to provide, even if it's a nickname, if it's a vehicle description, if it's the word on the street, if you will. A lot of times that's all we need for the investigators to take off running and solve that crime.
Question. That just recently escaped me. I'm so sorry.
That's all right.
You don't have to have the numbers, like no statistics or anything, but how often, if you could just kind of guess, people who are willing to come forward to talk versus those who aren't on a daily basis, weekly basis, yearly basis?
So we're saying, like, if I go out to a crime scene, how many people that have information, or percentage of people that have information, are willing to tell police versus those that aren't?
Yeah. Is it just a common theme with officers?
It's really hard for me to say, X number of people know something. But, for example, I went to a crime scene this weekend. I don't want to be too specific. And when the crime first went out, there were a number of neighbors and I assume family members and friends that were kind of in the area. And as soon as officers showed up, those individuals walked back to their houses, got in their vehicles, and left, which gives the indication to me that they didn't want to talk to police officers. They had to have some information, right? Even if it was just I heard shots, or I saw a vehicle, or such and such said. So it's concerning that information is not being brought to us. But it's also concerning to me as to why the information is not being brought to us. So I'm not so one-sided to believe that there may not be some reason for people to be untrusting of law enforcement, but that's what we've got to get past. And the only way to get past that is for people to be willing to talk to our officers, give us a chance, to gain that trust. All right.
So what about if there's like a fear beyond just a fear of police officers? Do you think that there's something going on in communities? Have you heard anything where people don't want to come forward because they fear what will happen to them?
Yeah, so no doubt that there's a fear of retaliation. So I don't mean to imply that the only fear is that there's not trusting police. I don't think that's accurate at all. But you hear people say all the time, or you see comments that, you don't have to live here, right? So you don't want to tell on my neighbor or my friend or my ex or whatever this case may be, because there's a fear of retaliation. That's why I like Crime Stoppers. We don't need to know that you're the one that gave that information. It's completely anonymous. And I'm fine with that. You don't have to call the police department. Call Crime Stoppers and let them get that tip to us. All we want is the information. And we certainly don't want to put anybody, I don't even want to stress anybody out of concern that it might get out who they were. So for that purpose, use Crime Stoppers. That's what they're there for.
One more question. You know what a snitch is, right?
I do.
Why'd you learn that?
I worked in narcotics for 14 years, so I know what snitches are.
When it comes to snitch culture,
I don't agree with it. The problem is if nobody ever snitches, so to speak, then we will never solve our crime problem. So people have to ask themselves, do you want a less violent city? Do you want to live, do you want your family to live in more peace? Because if you want your family to live in more peace and you want a less violent city, you've got to come forward with information. It's not snitching if you're trying to get a violent criminal off the street.
Besides this, what is, I guess, maybe some things that you all help get that, that interaction between police and
That
community?
perception.
Yeah, because it is a perception, going out of people
Right.
they don't trust police.
And we started off really strong this year doing more grassroots walks, neighborhood walks, with the intent of having a number of town hall meetings. And then COVID-19 struck on March 13th. And I hate to blame the pandemic, but in reality, the pandemic has kept us from following suit with our plans for the year because it's not safe to have a large number of people in an area. We're trying to convince people to stay at the house and not interact. So we don't want to be the ones that set up those opportunities. I hope to get that started, that initiative started sooner rather than later once it's safe for all of us to do so.